Alrighty, and welcome to the 120 podcast for episode 2 of part 2 on the Battle of Blair Mountain. I want to thank you all for watching the last episode, liking, sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff. You can find this on YouTube or on this Facebook reel, whichever one you want to go to, and hopefully you can enjoy a little bit of history.
Right.
On the last episode we talked, it was about Sid Hatfield dying, and this is where we're going to pick it right back off. Sid Hatfield's brought back into Mattawan, West Virginia on August 2nd, 1921. 2,000 people are in attendance to his funeral as they go from Mingo County of Mattawan, West Virginia, across the rope bridge of the swelling Tug River beneath to Buzzkirk, Kentucky, where he's buried today. Now you can see right here on this video, this is where he's buried at. It's a very beautiful, scenic thing. Good luck finding it, because anything GPS in that region, it's hard to find.
Over the bridge and hook up with 307.
Make a right
Maybe it's
turn.
a shortcut, Dwight. It said go to the right.
It can't mean that.
Among the people that talked over Sid Hatfield's grave while it was pouring down rain was a man by the name of Sam Montgomery. And Sam Montgomery didn't blame the shooters that killed Sid Hatfield and Ed Chambers over in Welch, West Virginia. He blamed the coal companies. He blamed the men that signed the checks for the death warrants of their friend Sid Hatfield. And because of the speech, it ignited a lot of the miners' frustrations that they had.
You feel, Chuck?
I went from happy to angry. Skip said, now I feel like kicking his ass. Then we'll see who's laughing, huh?
While the funeral commenced, the Huntington miners laid down their tools for 1 hour for Sid's honor, and the West Virginia UMWA headquarters closed down as well in honor of Sid Hatfield. The state militia and police were out in force to make sure no riots happened or no violence could be committed while this was going on, and at the time, nothing did happen. Most of the miners were grieving, yes, and angry, but there was no violent protest, at least as of that moment.
Blah, Nate. Goose fraba. Goose fraba. That's slower. Goose.
Because of Sid's death, there was protesting being done around the Governor Mansion for Governor Morgan. Now, Governor Morgan is a little bit of a, really a weak chain in this tale. It was after Sid Hatfield's funeral that the Union started protesting even more around the mansion for Governor Morgan. Now, Governor Morgan was the 16th governor of West Virginia, and he was a Republican. At the time, the Union leaders was by the name of Frank Keeney and of Fred Mooney. Now, Frank Keeney was the actual leader of that chapter within West Virginia, and he and Mooney would go multiple times over to Governor Morgan to list these demands that they had. They wanted an 8-hour workday, something that was relatively new at the time, but thanks to Henry Ford was proving to be a very valuable asset for people to have their R&R away from work. The last thing that they wanted, though, was an electoral of checkmen. I didn't talk about this in the last video, but there was another way that a lot of these coal companies were screwing over their workers. They started using this incentive-based performance, which was kind of similar if you take aluminum cans to a salvage yard, they weigh them, then they give you the price per pound of whatever it is of material you're taking in. So like aluminum per poundage, weigh it in, you get your money. This was what they were doing with coal companies as well. And some of the best coal miners they had was bringing out tonnage like crazy. So the company started messing with the weights, and by then they were screwing a lot of people out of a lot of money. They wanted an elected official to watch these weigh stations to make sure there was no funny business going on and people were paid fairly. By August 17th, Governor Morgan rejects all of these demands and will not hear another word from it, and goes on about his business like nothing's ever happened.
Do I need to be liked? Absolutely not. I like to be liked. I enjoy being liked. I have to be liked. But it's not like this compulsive need.
At this point, the miners feel like they've lost everything. There's no fight that's going to win. They've done every legal thing they could. They've raised up the union. The union has failed. And now at this time, the state Supreme Court has also ruled against the union on a lot of these issues of the mines. And then they start to assimilate. After the rejections from Governor Morgan, this powerful thing that is still rooted today in coal mine industry is the power of the grapevine. Not that one. This one here is one about talking, and coal miners are the greatest at gossip work, and this is exactly why this great movement started. Coal miners may not have had formal communications, but the grapevine was a very powerful asset that brought miners in from not just West Virginia and different counties, but even from coal mines over in Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois. A lot of these Appalachian men that were going to fight, they were actual veterans from the Great War, or as we know it today, World War I. And a lot of these coal miners started donating their old Army uniforms from not just that war, but the Spanish-American War, the American-Filipino War. So the most common coal miner uniform to this event was blue overalls and a red bandana tied around all of their necks. And this is where the term redneck was developed.
You might be a redneck.
Now, a lot of you are probably wondering, what the hell's in Logan that's standing in the way of these guys going into, where are they going? Why are they even uprising at this point? Well, a lot of it's because there are hundreds of miners being held in Mingo County, the same county Sid Hatfield was from, that are in prisons without any kind of bail, without any kind of former charge brought to them. They were just put in there. And a lot of it because of the privately owned companies putting in their deputies within the sheriff's control, and that's how they were filling them up.
I'm giving you the count of 3. If you ain't out of here on 3, I'm drawing on you. 1, 2, 3.
What brings us to Logan and Logan County is the fact that it stands in the middle between Marmot, West Virginia, where the train station is, and where Mingo County resides. And this brings us into this other character by the name of Sheriff Don Chafin. This is where things start to blur quite a bit, because the miners are not only going for just Mingo County, but now they're wanting to go into Logan for this man himself. Don Chafin is a company man through and through, and he's been bought out by them for a long time. Also, a fun fact, Chafin is an Anglo-Saxon name for a bald man. At this time, Sheriff Don Chafin is just 34 years old, and he starts planning the defense of Logan. He stands and says this is the line that the Union will never cross. He is a very powerful man in Logan County. One would say he's the most powerful man, and he's known almost as the Czar in West Virginia. Some even call him just the boss.
Huh?
When he starts building his defense, he has 3,000 people under his control, along with a lot of Baldwin Felts agents that have now turned into deputies that are underneath his rule. Some of these deputies was known as Logan's last standing army because of Don Chafin's corrupt deals he had with the companies.
I don't get lucky. I make my own luck.
At age 7, Don Chafin's father was a sheriff, and it really became a thing for the Chafin family to actually be in a lot of the politics in the local area. He's actually related to the Hatfields, and he has a lot of ties to the town, not just through the sheriff's office, but in the tax department and in also the county commission. What? A little side story a little bit about why Don Chafin is kind of a bad guy. Now, historically speaking, we don't know this without context, but here's the context. Living in West Virginia and you're in politics and you're in a town where you have a yearly salary of $3,500. In 1921, he was known to have $350,000 of wealth to him from a job that only made $3,500.
Hello?
On top of some of his financial questions, he was also in a 1919 incident where he wasn't even sheriff, but went into a different county to arrest a Union member. The Union member in question was William Petrie. He pulled a revolver on him, springing around. He was drunk as hell, and he tried to arrest him even though he had no jurisdiction. William Petrie ended up pulling out his .22 pistol and shot Chafin in the chest. Now, Chafin did fully recover from this, and the only regret that William Petrie had was he didn't use a larger caliber bullet, and he was acquitted for his crime because it was self-defense.
Every gun makes its own tune.
Another fun fact for you, this does not have anything to do with the story, but Don Chafin was actually shot in the chest another time in his life inside the sheriff department, I believe, He was shot in the chest, and he ended up walking back to the hospital, missed his heart by just a few inches. And then an outraged miner had barged into his office again at a later time and tried to shoot him in the chest, to which he pulled out his gun and says, "Go right ahead, we can both hop in hell together."
I will ruin your life with one phone call.
I'll end your life with one phone.
But by 1921, Don Chafin was now very sober, and he was stone cold hearted. He didn't care for the Union, and he wasn't standing for any of the nonsense that was going on. And this brought him to be even more dangerous than what a lot of the Union miners were expecting. As the numbers were accumulating and were into the thousands of men that were pouring into the state, a lady by the name of Mother Jones comes into the story. Now, I won't go into too much detail with her because I would like to do another video on Mother Jones. Her real name is Mary Jones. She was an Irish immigrant. One time, she was called the most dangerous woman in America. But she had a really soft spot for coal miners, and she came here with the goodness of her heart, but she did it in a very deceitful way that would later backfire on her. At this time, Keeney and Mooney are a little bit leery about Mother Jones. She's in her 80s. She's not quite as sharp as she used to be, but she is still a very powerful voice, and a powerful voice that's already ignited with violence and a lot of hateful rhetoric is not something they really want. At the same time, though, losing every legal battle that has been presented to the Union leaders, Mother Jones complicates things even more. She comes up to the miners trying to save their lives from a federal shootout by saying she has a letter from President Harding. Now, Keeney asked to see the letter from Mother Jones, to which her response was, "Go to hell."
You can go to hell, hell, hell.
Later documents reveal that she was actually working in cahoots with Governor Morgan, and there's even some facts that point to where she was working with the Rockefeller Group. She was a little bit easier to hoodwink later in life, and she called these men good Christian men. This is the last that Mother Jones is within the Union and West Virginia coal mines, as she is later going to Washington, D.C. to plead her case with the Secretary of War at the time, John W. Weeks. After the deception of Mother Jones, Governor Morgan finally gets President Harding to send down two people to try and oversee what is going on in West Virginia. He sends in two generals. Now, I'm going to go a little bit of a description on these two guys, with one in particular, and why President Harding chose him to oversee these operations. Now, I'll be switching tracks for a minute here and talking about this general by the name of Harry Bandholtz. He's a Michigan native that was first in the American-Filipino War, where he was known for his decisiveness and being tough, and he was also in World War I in the American Expeditionary Forces. Harry Bandholtz is known for one particular event that happened in 1919. He was in Budapest, where he was defending a Hungarian national museum against the Romanian soldiers trying to overtake the treasure and, of course, historical artifacts. You can go there to this day, and there's a statue of him right across from that very spot, something that they don't do for foreigners, as he is a very tough and decisive general, but he does not like to use violence. And this is exactly why I think President Harding put Bandholtz in this position. The other general I brought down, though, was by the name of William Mitchell. Although he doesn't have a huge chapter that we really know about, he is the father of aviation for the Air Force. He was, after World War I, one of the biggest advocates for air defense and offensive operations. This man here really pissed off a lot of people in Washington, D.C., and along with other Army officials, and he was known to be kind of a ruffian, a cowboy, and he wanted this opportunity to prove how efficient air can be. He was even at one point quoted by a reporter, just send in my boys and we can handle it. And reporter goes, how? His answer, gas.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Now, while this man was thinking in World War II future warfare-like logic, it was not wanted in any kind of spectrum with the coal miner war, because President Harding knew that the labor restrictions and things going on at that time was at a boiling point, not just in West Virginia, but in other places as well. As Bandholtz arrives to the scene, he calls for a meeting with Keeney and Mooney and with Governor Morgan to try and de-escalate this situation. He asks Governor Morgan if he wants to go speak with the miners, to which he kindly says, nah, they don't want me around there, for a good reason. And then he tells Keeney and Mooney to get your house in order, we're done. Now, at this point in time, because of Mother Jones' deceitful ploy, nobody is trusting anything, and with a lot of convincing, Kenny and Mooney finally get General Banholtz to give them an order with his signature on it that they can take to the miners to tell them to stop their assault to Logan because he's willing to send in federal troops to stop this brigade.
He's bluffing. Let's rush him.
No. He ain't bluffing.
You're not as stupid as you look.
As Kenny and Mooney move south and try to warn the miners, they are eventually almost killed in an ambush a couple of times. At one point, they screamed out their names just for 20 miners to come out with guns, saying, "Whoops, about killed you there."
Whoopsie daisy!
Finally, at one point, the fate finally caught up with them, and they met a miner who was leading a World War I vet who was also a vet of the American-Filipino War by the name of Harvey Dillon. Now, Harvey Dillon was leading a group and was shown the telegram or the message that General Banholtz had put, and he had, by luck, actually served under this very man himself. He looked over at the other coal miners and goes, "We can't fight them. We cannot fight the federal troops." He looks over at Kenny and Mooney and goes, "What do you want me to do?" Of course, with the power of the grapevine, coal miners start to spread the word that this is a real message from a real general and to put down their arms because they will be met with federal reinforcement.
Oh well, we tried.
While Banholtz may have been a pretty tough guy with a lot of this rhetoric, he was also understanding, and he decided to get with Governor Morgan and tell them to start getting trains ready, special trains, to take the miners back home and to slowly get everything down from the boiling point that it had been. Although, this is where he leaves the situation to go report back to D.C., but Banholtz has his doubts because he doesn't think Governor Morgan is taking this A, seriously enough, or have the competency to get things done quickly so that way things don't return to where they had been. Especially when you had bad actors like Don Chafin pulling up schemes being created by the companies themselves so they can assert federal authority, because at the time the company not only owned local, state, but they had federal ties too that the unions just didn't have at that time.
We don't have those Enron type connections.
While there was peace and the coal miners were starting to drift away, things heated up quickly.
To free. Oh, here we are, oh brothers, we carry with our feet the cries, the noise, the silence that our call has been impeded. Here we come, oh brothers, to mingle with our chants, to raise our family once more. Without the company.
Shaven decided that this was just the right time whenever the keg's about to go off that we should probably try and arrest somebody in a different county. When they tried to do this, a gunfight ensues inside of a tent city, a coal mine tent city, and then a few detectives are shot, a few people are killed. There's also another point where another bad actor that has been kind of proven to be a provocateur. This bad actor's name is the name of Bad Lewis.
Big Bad.
Now, Bad Lewis is kind of known to not really be pro-union, but he decides that he's going to kidnap a train crew, an engineer, a fireman, and a brakeman maybe, or a signalman, and they start going back town to town saying that the Baldwin-Felts group has been mowing down people with machine gun fire, women and children outside of a camp. He then starts to get people brought back to the train stations commandeering all these trains and bringing coal miners back to the fight, which enrages them to this point where they're ready to go to war against their very state. On the Union side, there is an incident that happens with a man who's leading, his name is Reverend John Wilburn. He's a Baptist pastor, and he's leading a group of miners, and they end up finding these 3 deputies. They're in a car. They're outside of Logan. The car ends up getting a flat tire. They fix the flat tire, and then they see this group, and as groups have, they have a secret code, secret catchphrase. They both give out the phrases to get a phrase back. Now remember, World War I vets, both sides, using the same things that they had learned. And when they realize none have the right call sign, again, a gunfire erupts. 2 deputies are almost killed immediately. The other one is severely injured, with a miner coming out and executing him, saying, "That one's for Sid."
You know, somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it.
Because of these 3 incidents, everything starts to return to where it was, and what Bandholz had feared would happen was indeed happening at this point. The miners were marching down to Logan. They were going to kill Dan Chafin, and they were going to go into Mingo and free their fellow workmen.
With my prayers.
Amen. I know you will, Esther. I know you will. But
as things start to boil up on August 29th, Morgan calls for federal troops to come in and for Bandholz to return. Nothing's really said. On August 30th, he says it again, we need help, and this is when the war really starts kicking in. The miners start advancing toward Logan, and skirmishes are happening on both sides. At this point, there's machine gun nests being made, and they overtake it, then they get taken back, and it's a lot of back and forth. While they are successful in some ways, they are being pushed back and being kept at bay. With the supplies of the governor and with 3,000 defenders, and they have a higher ground, the land itself is in Logan's favor, so they are keeping at bay the coal miners from coming up. Bandholz does come back to the state, ends up finding out there's nothing he can really do, and at this time, Mooney and Keeney leave the state, which for good reason, because now they're being charged for murder in different counties, and a lot of the non-union mines, the towns that were owned by the coal companies, were starting to use the law against them, even though at a lot of these predicaments, they were nowhere around when these events happened. As this battle for Blair Mountain is going on, the U.S. government decides they're going to send 21 airplanes out, more for reconnaissance, not so much for attacking, but they do have tear gas and they do have other kinds of means to try and break up this mob of a worker rebellion. While they would send 21 of Mitchell's planes, they did say we will not send Mitchell because of his antics on the public to try and use his aircraft for warfare on American civilians. By September 1st, Logan is keeping its ground just fine, and the coal miners are coming in for one last attack. First off, they're going to try and blow up a train trestle, so that way federal troops are delayed into getting there and they can get through into Mingo County. This is a failure, of course. They set up the dynamite in a fire, but a man comes over, puts out the fire, and discovers the dynamite before it is set off. So the trestle is saved, and federal troops do come in by the next day. Now, it's important to also say that on August 31st, they used the airplanes to drop flyers among the miners and along all the territory the Union had, with President Harding's telegram saying to put down all arms, you are an insurrection at this point. The coal miners, of course, ignore it and try to do one last stance against Logan. On September 1st, they try and advance onto the town, but they don't get very far and they end up pushed back away from it. And then by the time September 2nd comes around, federal troops are entering the scene and everybody puts down their weapons because, again, a lot of them that were fighting were World War I veterans and they refused to shoot at their fellow soldiers. Now, while they did use the planes for flyers to warn the miners to go back, they also used it as a weapon. They tried to tear gas a few different places and settlements. They even tried to bomb them. One bomb landing next to two women washing clothes, but luckily it had been a dud and no one had died from it. When federal troops arrived, both sides thought that this conflict was in their favor for federal troops to be on the ground. They actually saw it as a very positive thing, and they started to put down their weapons and listen to the federal troops. Although, sadly for the Union miners, this was not going to turn out in their favor, and they were going to be charged for treason. Almost 900 miners were charged with treason, and Governor Morgan tried to have Bandholz start arresting as many as he could. Although, Bandholz tried to keep a very level composure said, "We will not be doing that because it did not break federal law." In his eyes, he did not see this as an insurrection, more of a labor dispute that just went way too fast, way too beyond control, and he blamed a lot of this on Governor Morgan's lack of leadership. Bill Blizzard was now the leader of the union, and he was with the boys whenever they were found. Now, he had a gun permit and an identification at the time, and he was asked at the time to whether we should hand over our guns. Out of this whole ordeal, 10,000 miners, only 400 guns were turned in because a lot of the miners did not have licenses or permits to be carrying their weapons. In the hills, they had actually hid a lot of their weaponry so they could always go back to get it if need be. And that was kind of the sentiment that a lot of the coal miners had. Now, during the time, there was trials afterward where they tried to get Bill Blizzard as a complete traitor. A lot of the coal companies and even Governor Morgan wanted all of these men to suffer at the highest amount of the law. Although we seem to just skid right past the things that Don Chafin was doing because, well, he was in the pocket of the company. And who else was in the pocket of the company? None other than also Governor Morgan. After hundreds of trials and all of them failed while coal miners were getting acquitted, at one time the company said we have to have some type of accountability, some type of scapegoat, if you will. And this is where they try and they actually do convict of treason a man by the name of Walter Allen. Now, Walter Allen actually gets bailed out right before he gets convicted, and he is never seen of again as he escapes punishment for treason.
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
By this time, a lot of things are starting to cool down now, and there's a huge defeat that happens within the union. Thousands of members lose their memberships. Union mines start shutting down because the non-union mines were still working. And then, nationally, the union movement starts to just teeter. And about the only union mine that's ever left is in Illinois and not anymore in West Virginia. They eventually do come back in the 1930s, and the Battle of Blair Mountain and people like Mother Jones are heroes to this movement, and they actually bring back a lot of the things they had been fighting for. Frank Keeney and Fred Mooney were kicked out of the union. They lost everything in a lot of ways. If you want to look up at Frank Keeney, he once tried to rally another union and failed at that, and then he ended up working as a parking lot attendant. Fred Mooney, he started a couple bids for state legislature, and he lost. He divorced his wife, became a carpenter, moved, and then he later committed suicide, sadly, I think in the 50s. And that concludes episode 2 for the Battle of Blair Mountain. It was a fun story. You can look up the Battle of Blair Mountain by, I think it's Robert Shogan. It's a really good book, so if you like the more detailed analysis of that story, I would definitely point you in that direction. What am I going to do next? Don't know. I got a couple of projects, though, lined up for you, so you just stay tuned for that. I got another story that I'm already working on. I think I might cover Captain Morgan. Of course, you can always support this channel by buying this book, Book 2 of the Jet Legacy, The Fall of the Eisenhower Armada. So if you like, World War II and Cold War and spy rings, all that fun stuff, you would like that. I think you would. So thanks again for watching, and if you want to, just like and subscribe, share, and I really do appreciate all the positive feedback I got on the first episode, and I'll see you next time.
Well, I'm running right down the road. No money, sure as hell ain't gonna do what I'm told. Fire in the mountain, fire in your eyes. Hold on to something, hold on to what you feel is right. That this world's in chaos, and you never know who you wanna be. All that I know is this world's in chaos, and I'm always going 120.